Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Living on Lemonade podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lauren. It's been few weeks, I guess, now since I last recorded. Took a couple weeks off, and I'm recording a couple days now before this episode will be published. So today, I decided I decided I was ready to record again and we'll kind of see where this goes. I have an idea. Like I wanted to give you a bit of an update, why I've been MIA. Not that I have to, but I've always been kind of transparent and sharing so that those who might be going through something similar know that they're not alone and just articulating the experiences that I'm having and also I also want to address kind of a duality that I've been feeling because I'll start off with that. Um, actually, let's go with let's we'll rewind here a little bit. I came off nights this morning, so I'm still I did 3 nights in a row, which is like I was doing pretty well by the end of the shift, but my brain gets kind of jumbled. 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, this past Wednesday. So by the time it airs, it'll be almost 3 weeks. So it'll be 2 days from this episode airing, it'll be 3 weeks. We had to put Darla down. And if I'm sure I've talked about Darla along the way, I hope I have. She's the cat that my mom and I got together back in 2011. I was still at home. It was just under a year after my dad left, and 6.5 years after Chrissy died. I know I've talked about Chrissy in past episodes about grief. Those would have been one of the first episodes. I think I talked about losing a pet as a child and stuff. And it really, for me at least, took me that long until I felt ready to explore the idea of another cat. Now, I'd kind of looked at Humane Society websites off and on, but I kind of asked Chrissy, like, bring us someone, bring us a kitty that just will bring. I had a whole like list of things I wanted. Basically, another Chrissy. Darla was not another Chrissy. They were very different cats. Chrissy was like, I describe her as like an angel pie. She was very gentle and just kind and very tolerant, very patient. Darla was kind of the opposite of that in a lot of ways. Now, I've heard about cats just being like totally evil and you can't go near them and stuff like that. Darla was not like that. She just had a very short fuse. So, she didn't really like being picked up. Chrissy, I could hold like a baby. Darla was not here for it. I had to like pick her up and hold her upright so she could like look around and stuff. And yeah, she didn't really like to be handled a lot. And when she was done with you petting her, like you knew right away because she didn't meow much. Once in a while for if she was hungry and you're like getting her food, she'd do those little meows, which are super cute. Or when my mom would go away and I'd visit, check in on her and stuff, she would, if she hadn't seen someone in a little bit or was feeling lonely, she might do those little meows, but she didn't meow much, which was, I guess, kind of nice. But she growled a lot. And I used to tease her that, she needed to work on her communication because if she was starting to get annoyed, it would just go like 0 to 60 in no time. There would be no real warning. She would just start growling and you're just like, okay. And I guess that was the warning because then it would get worse. But anyway, we had to put Darla down. I'll go back to that. But the last 2.5 weeks has just, it's been weird. Um, and I think I'll probably get emotional, but I think a big part of it is that she lived with my mom. So once I moved out, I didn't have the daily contact with her. And actually I had separation anxiety from her. I'm sure that's what it was because I just like yearned to be around her. And there was just this Darla and I just had at least I felt it, Um, she just had a magnetism, even though she was an asshole, like a lot. I just loved, I loved being around her. I loved giving her snuggles and kisses, even though she hated it. Like I used to tell her when I left, my mom's like, be a good girl, be good for mom, or I'll give you snuggles and kisses. And I would anyway, so it really didn't matter. But um, it was just kind of a funny thing. And because she doesn't live with me, and I haven't been back to my mom since like the day after we put her down, just stuff's, I've been working and this and that and trying to, anyway, I just haven't been back to my mom's. I'm going tomorrow, like tomorrow off, which will be the Sunday. It's been harder for my brain to process it because I haven't been there and being in that the what feels like an empty house aside from my mom being there, right? Um, I can tell myself she's gone and I have those waves of grief, but there's a big part of me since I haven't been back to my mom's since right after that my brain's just like, oh, well, you'll see her next time you're there and she's at your mom's. And there's what I've learned about grief in how the brain uh, tries to process. And there's a book I've been reading off and on. I'm not sure where it is. Anyway, I don't think it's in front of me. It's called The Grieving Brain. And I also listen to a podcast called That Neuroscience Guy. So if you like neuroscience, check him out. He's a professor at the, I think, University of Victoria, BC. Anyway, the way between that book and him talking about grief, the I think it's the prefrontal cortex. It's definitely like there's a left and a right side. I'm pretty sure it's the PFC. One side, I'm blanking a little bit on which does which right now. One side, so I'm not even gonna guess. You'd have to look it up. But one side is in charge of maintaining our worldview. So like how we see the world, our beliefs, uh, and stuff like that. And the other side is in charge of updating our worldview. So when you think about kind of like this, it's a little bit of like there's two things trying to do two parts trying to do two entirely different things at the same time. One's trying to maintain your worldview and one's trying to update it based on, how things are changing because we know the only constant is change. The part that the part where I'm not at my mom's, that's maintaining that worldview. Whereas like knowing she's gone and trying to go through that grieving process and just like be with it is the part that's updating. So when I'm not there, it's harder for that updating part to kind of take the wheel, I guess. And I know she's gone. I held her when the vet gave her the medicine and helped her transition. So like that was very real. She was in my arms, like in my lap, curled up, and I was holding her and loving on her. And I was there in the aftermath for a night. I left the next day because I think I had to go back to work or whatever. I had stuff going on. And and just, the simple like I would often text my mom at night if we were chit-chatting over text and be like, "What's Darla doing?" That was a pretty common question. What's Darla doing? And she would just send me a picture of like Darla sitting wherever she was sitting. And like if she was aware of it, she'd usually glare at the camera and oh man, she just yeah, so it's been it's been a rough couple weeks. We had Darla for 13 and a half years. She was a rescue, so she was around like 15, 16 years old. Um, and it's a big loss for us because she she had a big personality for a cat. Like, oh my God, she was so di multi-dimensional and um it's really devastating to try and live in a world without her. So, and here's this next part I wanted to talk about because this is the duality here that I'm going to explain. And maybe you felt it, or especially if you create on social media or you share and you do this type of work that I do, where I just share life experience in the hope that other people can resonate or you can learn something from it or just feel less alone. I shot on a Wednesday and I didn't have an episode for the following Monday. And there was a kind of a battle in my brain of like, do I record or do I not record? And do I allow, do it's like there's like the battle in my brain as I'm speaking and I'm trying to get it all out and articulate it because there's several kind of layers here. So I'll do the best that I can. I feel there is a power in vulnerability. I think it's essential to bringing humanity together on a deeper level. And this is why I talk about my experiences and I'm very open and vulnerable about stuff. There's a power in the vulnerability. I watch content too, and it's super, sometimes when it's super raw, it's the most powerful because it taps into your emotions and you just like it connects you to your humanity and the humanity of others. Having said that, it's like one of those like a flow chart of like this, but then depending on this and this, like you can go other ways. So I this is what's coming to my brain. There's a power in vulnerability. However, I still had to check in with myself and say, yes, absolutely, there's a power in vulnerability. I could probably speak very, you know, in a like a raw way right now, and I might have a powerful message, but I had to get curious in my intention around it, full intention, because there's kind of there's societal kind of expectations, or especially if you create content and there's sometimes that expectation of like, no, you have to create content, like just keep going, make sure you have something to post every week, right? And as you can see, if you've been following along, there are weeks. I try not to go too long. Because I do like to share, right? And this is almost a legacy project for myself too, and whoever, and down the line, and it's like a some episodes feel like a journal entry of some sort for me, right? So it's kind of like it helps me to express myself. It's good for me, it's good for those who it lands on. But I had to get curious on, am I know that part of it's for other people, that's why I do this, but is it to my own detriment in any way? Am I sharing because I think I should share, getting curious on the should, or like, is there an expectation there? And do I really feel up to it? Is this the best time to share powerfully about my experience? Because another duality, sometimes there are some cases where I've learned along the way that it's not to hide the experience, but sometimes when you're and what especially when it's very emotional, sometimes like when you're in the thick of it, you don't have that perspective, especially if it's very like triggering and um dysregulating, I guess is maybe the better word to use. I think trigger is such a like a buzzword. So I try to be careful about really the context that I use it and use it intentionally. But it could work, but we'll use dysregulated because it kind of, for me, it articulates that there's just, you're really not yourself. And sometimes sharing from that space, depending on what the situation is and depending on where you are mentally and emotionally, it can just be, and I've done this like a million times. I think it's just part of, if you're into human design, I'm a manifester, and it's like throat chakra activated. We're very powerful with our words and the way that we deliver messages verbally. But what I've been learning is when we have a wound and we express from our wound, it's just like we're just projecting. We're very powerfully projecting our wound. So I've come into this awareness, and I have to be intentional and aware that if I'm just if I'm doing it in the wrong state, or depending on the state it's in, I don't want to say it's wrong, but if I'm expressing myself in a certain state and having the awareness of what that looks like, I'm just projecting my wound. And I don't know that that's necessarily impactful or powerful for others. Otherwise, it's just like I'm just almost like dumping, emotionally dumping on my community. So there's an awareness and a discernment of, is this gonna like help people? Am I sharing? Is there wisdom yet to share? Or am I just in the thick of it and I need to just like navigate the darkness? I say this because like sometimes it just, you're like, oh, I don't know where the edges are or the walls, and I'm just in this dark and I just need to wait till I can see some light and embody and integrate the experience, because they're more powerfully than sharing. Well, it's, you can still be vulnerable, but more powerfully than just sharing it in a raw moment, when it's embodied and you have a little bit more separation, so you're not fully like emotionally charged to the event, or the situation. There's just like this depth of wisdom and power that comes from waiting until you're down the road a little bit. At least it, because, okay, I keep getting like all these visuals. When you're in it, it's very like it can be very off kilter depending on what the situation is, right? So you want to wait till you're like a bit on even ground and you even know what you're talking about and you're not just like blurting it out. Maybe that's the best way to say it. So I decided, and I would kind of go back and forth. It's like, well, I do have some wisdom because I am very curious and I am very, um, I have my blind spots, but when it comes to grief, like I'm well versed, and I can pretty quickly start to take the nuggets, the beauty, the wisdom from the grief. That's not to say that I'm not still in deep, excruciating emotional pain, but I can see how bittersweet the situation can be, and feel the the range of emotions from all of the beautiful things that the situation has brought and all of the painful things, and wanting to escape it a little bit. And ultimately I decided I kind of just needed to um, be quiet and just be in the emotions for a couple weeks. I zoned out a bit. Eric and I watched Making a Murderer. We tried like when it first came out, and the thing Netflix kept glitching. So eventually, I don't know, we came upon it. And I'm like, oh, let's try this again, like years later. And then I was totally glued to it. But I think looking back on that, I think I just needed um that space of time to just kind of like zone out a little bit. And um, what I will say about that, and I've experienced in through different losses, is that can be a slippery slope because it's so easy. And as humans, we really resist feeling discomfort and pain, be it physical, emotional, mental, spirit, like whatever that looks like. We very often numb. I think it's just part of society. I think everyone numbs to an extent. Like it's just like scrolling. You get into that scrolling pattern. You have to be aware of that. That is like a kind of an escapism. What are you escaping from? So I was conscious of it and I kind of just was like, I just need to embrace this a little bit. I'm still crying every day or having my moments. So it's not that I'm fully numbing, but sometimes it's just a lot and it feels nice to kind of have that reprieve and just refocus on you focus your attention on something else for a little bit so you can have a bit of a vacation, I guess, from it, because she was top of my mind, front of my mind for like 24/7. It's just like I couldn't stop thinking about it because she had such a beautiful impact on my life, and it happened fast to us. She'd been losing weight after her cancer surgeries in the spring and her recovery and stuff. It was harder to notice how much she lost, I guess. And she was still kind of like, I don't know. Like I look back on pictures, like, did I miss something? And she still kind of looked like a chunkers and a lot of stuff. So it just depended on like how she was laying or sitting. And um but she wasn't eating as much and she was always a foodie. Like we had to I bought her that automatic feeder thing that's scheduled and it drops food, and every time it dropped food it would make the noise in the bowl. She would get up from wherever she was and run to the food, and like she loved food. We had to start really being intentional with um like portioning her food out because we were like, she's getting older but like she's overweight, we need to help her manage her weight so that she's healthier. And so yeah, she's kind of started to lose a bit of that like life force spark, and I didn't really notice because I wasn't there as much, but I don't think she was like playing as much. She would kind of but the biggest thing was her not being as hungry or not as like motivated when the food would drop, and she was peeing more too for a time. So it kind of got to, and she was getting more lethargic. So I looked it up a little bit and it was like maybe she's diabetic. So we made an appointment, and because I just something felt off, and she even came to me in a dream and said like, I need to go to the vet. I need to, you need to take me to the vet. So I was like, all right. The day before we took her on was it October 21st or 22nd? 21st. Yeah. It was a bad day for her. She just wasn't herself. My mom was kind of worried about her. I was too. I got there that day, maybe in the evening. I can't remember. I stayed overnight because the thing is with Darla, we would have to um sedate her before her appointment because she was so spicy and she was a baddie. So I would be there overnight so we could give her medicine really early because I think her appointment was at, I don't know, 9. So that means we had to sedate her at 7, and yeah, to give her 2 hours for it to set in. Um, and yeah, she just wasn't herself. She just wasn't feeling so great. So I was like, well, we'll see what's up. And we took her to the vet. They did blood work and urine. Even sedated, they had to put a muzzle on her. And thankfully the results, like he got the results back really quickly and he just came in. So we didn't have to like take her home and wait for results and follow up and such, which yeah, really worked out. I don't know if he would have taken an x-ray that day, but the x-ray machine was down. So I don't know if he didn't like he didn't say it because it was down, or if he wouldn't have done that normally that day. She sounded great when he listened to her heart and her lungs. Um, but yeah, she definitely was feeling punky. And um the blood work and urine came back basically indicating that she had kidney disease. We didn't know how severe. And then he said, you can bring her back and we can do an ultrasound to see if renal lymphoma, which is like cancer originating from the kidney, is a factor in this. And I said, will that help us? That would give us a bigger picture and understanding of timeline and how to support her through this chapter, because kidney disease is there's no cure. You can treat symptoms and slow the progression of the disease through medication and stuff. So we took medications home with us, new food. She did like the new food, and we were giving her like tuna and stuff just to let her have whatever calories she wanted because she had lost weight. She lost about 2.5 pounds. Now, to be fair, the last time we brought her in, they didn't weigh her because they got so distracted because we had to take her. Last time we took her in was in the spring after her second surgery. She had to get the stitches removed because they'd taken so much out. The surgeon or the vet basically said I took as much out while still being able to sew her up. So those ones had to be like manually removed. She had her onesie on. She had like licked through the onesie and got a little piece of the incision infected. So they take the onesie off, they take the stitches out. She's fine with that. She's sedated, but she like allows them to handle her, take the stitches out. And then when they see the infected part, they give her a shot of antibiotics that kind of releases over a few days from my understanding. And then they say, uh they're telling us what's going on. They say like we recommend two new onesies because she destroyed her onesies. She was licking the shoulders and biting at them because she loves to groom. She loved to groom herself. She was so neurotic about it. And we even bought this like spray, this tart apple spray for her shoulders, and she would still lick it. Like she was relentless. So I have videos and photos. Maybe I'll like share them on socials as I kind of, progress. But all these holes in her onesie. Like the vet office had never seen a cat do something like that. She looked like the Hulk. She just had all, it was just shredded and like, oh my God. Anyway, when it came time to put the onesie back on her, because the last two times she was still under anesthesia, right? So they could just put them on her. They had to come out and get an extra set of hands. It took three people to get her onesie back on. So very, very chaotic. I was like, Darla, you're such an asshole. Like you're fine with them pulling out your stitches, but you won't let them put a freaking onesie on. She hated that thing. And then we got her a cone because we're like, we're not playing this game of you trying to lick your incision. So she had to wear a cone for a little bit, just so we could get through the healing period. It was for her. And when we were in the room with her, we'd take the cone off and if she started licking, we put it on. But yeah, that was a whole thing. So she didn't get weighed. So we don't know what she actually weighed at that point. She had lost more weight since the second surgery. But from the time we'd weighed her last, she lost 2.5 pounds. That's a lot for a small animal, right? When you think of if a healthy weight's like 10 pounds, 2.5 pounds, like 25% of their weight, right? Um, so yeah, she lost weight and we said, "Oh, let's do the ultrasound so we have a better picture and can support her in this journey." My mom and I promised each other that we wouldn't let her suffer. We waited too long to put Chrissy down, and that's kind of one of those things that it doesn't happen twice, right? And there's a lot of guilt around it, but I think she's forgiven us since then. But it's just one of those things you don't do it twice. You don't let them linger for yourself. And yeah, we didn't fully know better at that time, I guess. So we know better now. And Darla was getting better, like eating more. Some of the meds were to help stimulate appetite. And there was an ointment we put on her ear to help with, she was anemic too. So yeah, 9 days later, she has her ultrasound appointment, and the day before again, she's punky. Like it was so weird. The only two real bad days that my mom like that were kind of more noticeable than just her not quite being herself were the days before her vet visits, which was so kind of bizarre. Anyway, she spent up most of the day downstairs and she had been spending more time downstairs. So I guess looking back, sometimes when you look back, you see some of the signs that maybe weren't as prominent in the moment because you're just like doing life and not putting all of the pieces together. I'm still glad that we took her in like as soon, we took her in early enough that it was a good outcome for her. But so she had a really bad day the day before the ultrasound appointment, and she had some shortness of breath. Her breathing was kind of labored. She would walk like a very short distance and she'd be out of breath. She hadn't really eaten all day. I ended up just kind of like laying with her. She was laying on the mat in the bathroom. She just was kind of pulling away from us a little bit. Wasn't as like, not that she was super snuggly. She had gotten a little bit more snuggly since her surgery in the spring, or her cancer journey really shifted her. Maybe I'll talk more about that another time. But I laid with her in the bathroom beside her and gave her some Reiki, and just I just there was a part of me that was like, I don't know if we're coming out of this tomorrow. And through what I've been through with grief, with my dad, the trauma around that, and just watching my grandma decline with dementia, and watching, parts of her kind of um, go away, there's the wisdom in that has been just surrendering and leaning into what is, and supporting that loved one in the moment with so much unconditional love. So I just laid beside her, gave her some Reiki, like kind of pet her, and just told her how much I loved her and that she's supported, and that we're going to go see her doctor the next day, and like whatever. I mean, she's a cat, but I truly believe on some level she understood. And I think it was important to just like articulate that, especially because she has so much like anxiety and stuff. That evening, one of my friends recommended we just like warm up a towel in the dryer, and let her kind of lay on it. So we set that up for her and just tried to make her as comfortable as possible. She wasn't like panting, so she definitely was, there was some respiratory distress, but she wasn't in like full pant. Like if she tried to jump up onto the top of the couch, she would pant a little bit, but would kind of settle. So I was like, she's not in like full distress that I think we need to go to the emergency, but you can tell she's uncomfortable because she can't get like a full breath. So at that point, I thought, well, maybe she's definitely dehydrated because she hasn't been eating or drinking all day. That can wreak havoc on the body. And I thought maybe her blood levels have gone down more, and that's why she's short of breath. Because with anemia, not a doctor, but just the observations I thought could be a possibility. So I'm like, maybe she's like a blood transfusion, or like fluids. And yeah, so we got up early the next morning, and I still feel so bad for having to give her the sedative. Like she hated it because you had to shoot it in her mouth, and she'd fight you. And I knew she was feeling punky and she wasn't breathing well, but also knowing that the sedative is also works for pain. So if she had any pain or discomfort, it would help with that. So I was like, I know this sucks, but it'll help with our car ride and just being at the vet and the stress of that, and any discomfort you feel, it'll kind of help. It just makes them high, right? So they're just kind of like they're feeling no pain. We get to the vet, he pulls her out, and he's examining her. She was really good about it. She didn't seem to mind that vet. The other one she was more spicy with, so I don't know. But this vet had a very he had an extra calming, like he had just had a very calming energy about him. The other one was wonderful too. I love them both. But yeah, Darla just seemed to respond to this one a little bit better. He told us that based on the physical, she was showing no signs of pain. I don't know if that also had to do with the gabapentin, but that was really part of what was really reassuring to us. When he went to listen to her lungs and heart, he said, I'm not getting like full breath sound, like I'm not getting good breath sounds. So he said to do the ultrasound, she would have to lay on her back for about 30 minutes, and that would be very uncomfortable for her. And I said, don't put her through that. And I asked, would an x-ray give us a some more information to help us know what exactly we're looking at here? He said yes. So he went and took her, and it wouldn't like she'd be able to lay on her side. So it wasn't going to like make her uncomfortable. So he went back and he only had to do one image, and he brought it back. He had it on his phone, and he was, I think, just as shocked as we were to see that her lungs were full of cancer and she had fluid in her abdomen. Um, yeah, because like a week before she had healthy breath sounds. I'm sure it's not like it popped up in a week, but if he had taken an x-ray the week prior, it would have shown it. I think My best guess, again, not a doctor, but I'm thinking um it was probably the fluid that wasn't allowing her lungs to expand. That was like the bigger thing in terms of like symptom wise and her labored breathing. The lung stuff would have been there, but perhaps not as impactful yet. But that's part of the cancer. You start to get fluid buildup and stuff. So that is the natural progression. Um, so it's like immediately in that moment, it was like, wow, she's not coming home with us. Because and he didn't recommend it, but he's like, I could send you home with steroids and things to treat the symptoms. And we're like, absolutely not. She's not gonna get better. And she's already showing signs of respiratory distress. So we would be doing her a disservice to take her home when she's already uncomfortable. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And then it's going to get to the point where we're going to have to like rush her in. And our luck, it'd be on a day when the vet's not in the office or the vet's closed, right? So it was like we had to have that conversation about, we had to have that end of life conversation. He said, I have to go do surgery, but you could take her home and bring her back in the afternoon. And I said, she hates car rides. That's not for her to take her home. And so they had this lovely room set up that was at the back of the office and like down a hall that was very private and had a couch and like the table with some blankets and stuff. And I was like, don't put her on the table. She's gonna stay in my arm, stay in my lap. Um, so they further sedated her to kind of prep her and said, take your time. So we spent an hour with her. She was like non-responsive, right? Like I'm sure she was fully unconscious. So I looked in her eyes and there was no like I didn't get another moment where we could look into each other's eyes and say goodbye, but I know she heard me and she felt me and my mom and I told her many times like all the good things and how much we loved her and we had a good time together. And I remember they had music playing. We're like, we need to turn this music off because it reminded me of a funeral home, and I'm like, I can't do that. It was like dysregulating for me. And anyway, where was I going with that? Yeah, we what I wanted to say, what I was thinking about is the importance, and I was very intentional, especially because when my dad died, it really, and I don't even know if I've really told this story, but it was fast. It was traumatic, and we didn't get to make decisions from any sort of calm. It was all chaos, and that takes a toll on the nervous system, and that is what, you know, to, to me, like trauma is when you're dysregulated and you don't have that, you just can't process things in the moment. So having been through that with my dad and still be having the shock of Darla, I I was very intentional on doing this on our timeline, respecting the vet and all, and the resources and stuff. But they did say like take your time. They said like ring the bell. We never actually rang the bell. They would come in and check on us and such, and we would just say whether we were ready or not. Um, but it gave us an opportunity because we weren't gonna like we could have taken her home, brought her back, but why not just spend an hour in that room and just like snuggle her and tell her what we wanted to say that she already knew because we'd said it a million times. And then yeah, it just kind of became it was like, okay, we're ready. Like let's, she definitely was ready. Um, so in between stuff, the vet came in and yeah, he helped her transition, and then they said like take all the time you want. So then I held her for another like hour just like petting her and stuff. She had the softest fur. even the vet techs were like, she has like the softest fur we've ever felt. I'm like, I know, she is obsessed with grooming herself. I would like kiss her on the head or like, touch her face, and it's like, oh gosh, she's gonna have a full bath now. And it was kind of one of those, a teaser about it. I would joke about. It's like, oh God, I gave Darla a kiss. Now she's gonna spend an hour grooming herself because I'm so yucky. But yeah, she had the softest fur, and I think that's one of the things I like yearned to just like pet her because she was so soft, and it was so I didn't realize how comforting petting her was just with like how soft she was, and it was just so nice. So we took our time afterwards too. We just laid with her. We knew she was gone. I truly feel that her soul had left her body before he officially like stopped her heart. My mom had that sense too. I was just like, I don't think she's like floating around just waiting for the physical part to be done. But it's just like a sense that I had. I was like, she's not here anymore, not in her body. Um, so that was kind of when we're like, okay, I'm ready. Like, let's finish this for her so she can like fully detach. But I think she was just like floating around the room, hanging with us and supporting us in her way. That's just, yeah, the feeling I got. So we took our time. And I think that's one of the things I really want to emphasize when, if you have to go through an experience like that, just make sure that you take the time that you need so that your body and nervous system can kind of calibrate a little bit to it. Obviously, not fully. It's very dysregulating, especially if you didn't really fully expect to be taking your pet in and not and leave without them that appointment, right? But yeah, the the last couple weeks have been a bit of a daze. And this is gonna be a long episode, I feel like, but I don't know. This is me sharing my story, and I hope that it brings comfort to some. Maybe a few tears for those who like know the pain and just, feel the humanity of it. And if you do, thank you for, that support in that way, because I think when we can share those emotions, even if you haven't gone through it, but you just feel a little bit of what I'm feeling, it just like it brings us together in a way. So, um, it's like a heart hug, right? As I do for many people. Um, yeah, it's I I've been thinking about Darla and all of who she was, and really the essence of her. And I'll go on a little bit quick side story. I've been in this container, this learning coaching mastermind container, just finished, but we kind of set up the intention at the beginning. It was 3 months, and one of the themes, like my coach, she kind of tuned in and the thing that she came up with me is about grief and how it's such a grief and death has been such a prominent theme in my life, and the kind of idea to morph into or evolve into is to learn how to not like stay stuck in it so long, but to find the beauty in the process, in the grief, in the healing, and use it to expand and create more joy in my life. I have done that in ways like with Nicole. She was very vivacious. She was very full of life. And what I didn't even realize until we were having these conversations is like, yeah, I made a promise to her after she died to live twice as big for both of us. So having more of an intention of what did this soul, what did this person, what did this fur baby like bring to your life? What was there? I also believe that they have their own kind of like soul mission, and when it's complete, they leave. They're done. They don't stay here. They don't cling. And that's brought me a lot of comfort, that kind of idea, and for me like an understanding. So if you want to apply this to you, think about what life was like when they came into your life, and how did they support you through that time, through the duration of the time that you had together. And then look at what was happening in your life when they made their exit. And I can tell you that when she came into our life, it was very turbulent. Like I said, it was not long after my dad left. There was a lot of anger and stuff. And I think that the other thing that like spiritual coach told me about pets is they hold the space and they also hold some of the emotion that we have and like in what we're going through. And we had a lot of anger. So it's kind of not surprising she was so spicy and we had some incidents, right, where we were afraid of her for a few years 'cause she like attacked us a few times. But anyway, that's my own kind of personal view. So if that doesn't land, then just like, forget about it. But seeing having that like curiosity of like could that be a thing, it's like oh yeah, that does land for me because I see the journey that we took together, right? And I see her cancer journey from earlier this year and how became this beautiful. I mean, she was already beautiful in her ways, but like spicy and she was an asshole a lot. um I love her more than anything. But seeing how she transformed and she became a much more gentle and kind and patient cat. And she had this deep bond with my mom through my mom caregiving her. And she understood you could tell she understood that my mom was trying to help her. So she didn't resist it as much as we thought. And yeah, she became this very like, she liked to be right beside us. And she had this little routine with my mom. And they just became very close. And it was beautiful to see her kind of like transform into this the butterfly and have that experience. And I think a big part of the grief that I feel is that we no longer have the opportunity to witness and know that version of her. It was short-lived, but I think it was part of her own soul evolution. And there was a lot of healing that happened in that time for us too. I've been on this spiritual journey and just like healing, healing grief and all the things, since my dad died. It was a catalyst to that, but very concentrated over the last like year or so, and that's kind of been like her evolution too, so you can see it mirrored. And that's just kind of an observation, right? And seeing how I've really come out the other side. My mom and I have had healing between us and we're in this very beautiful place, and then all of a sudden Darla just like gets sick and leaves, and before we can even really know what's what. And I think that her exit was just like her mission here, both for herself and in supporting us as like our little family, was complete, and it was time to let go. So um I try to kind of focus on that a bit. It gives me peace if that's the way it is. If not, like whatever, at least it supported me in the time, right? But I do feel that way. And I'm still gonna have that grief because like she was just such a big presence. Like the house feels empty without her, even though there's two of us when I met my mom's, right? But so there's gonna be lots of grief, but I have a lot of videos. I have over 1,100 photos and videos of Darla to look back on over the 13 and a half years. I have some spicy videos, I have some funny videos, I have some sweet videos, and I have all these memories. So it's been a journey, and I think recording this, apologies for the length of it, but if you like anecdotes and stories and humanity, I think you'll enjoy this episode, especially if it resonates, if you've been through this journey, if you're going through it, or even down the road, if this offers a new perspective that lands on you and can help you just to kind of understand and give you peace and some comfort after losing a pet. They are family. I love Darla more than some of my biological family. So there's that, right? She just there was we're like there's a soul connection there. I was always just so magnetized to her even when she was such a baddie. Um I miss the hell out of her. I miss the hell of her. And tomorrow's going to be very emotional when I go to my mom's, and that part of the brain that's in charge of updating my worldview is hit hard with the realization again that the one that's in charge of maintaining has been kind of helping maintain, and in the denial of that she's actually gone. But I know she's still around. She's still like energetically around, and I take comfort in that. And at the end of the day, the best thing we can do is love our pets, give them the best care that we can, let them know that they're safe, let them know that they're loved, and let them go on their timeline and don't keep them for our own um, emotionality, and help them. Just help them. This is the best thing we can do, and I have no regrets about that. I miss the hell out of her, but I know we did the best thing for her that day, even though it was heart-wrenching for us. I'll close off by saying this. I haven't felt her around. I don't feel like I've gotten really any signs from her. The day after she passed, though, my aunt was at my mom's, and she was sitting in the living room, and my mom and we actually had a flood later that day after Darla died, and there was about an inch of water in the basement, all over the basement. So that was chaos. But I'm not gonna go into all of that toilet malfunction. It was all it flowed over. It was all clear water, but like technically black water. But anyway, um, thank God for my brother-in-law and my husband. They came with their shop vacs. They cleaned up the water at least, because the restoration, like the people couldn't come right away. I moved a lot of boxes out of the basement just so that we could save as much as possible. But very chaotic. So anyway, the next day, my aunt's over, and my mom and I are dealing with some of this stuff. Like I'm talking to the guys who are, ripping up baseboards and whatnot. And my aunt says after, she's like, "Oh, while you guys were like doing your stuff, there was a mama cardinal in the bird bath outside." And she was bathing herself, but she was bathing herself like so aggressively that the water was flinging all the way and hitting the patio door. And I was like, "Oh my God, Darla." Because like if there's gonna be a sign from her about something, it's probably gonna, a something bathing, like aggressively bathing would be like totally up her alley. So it made me think of her right away. But I haven't felt anything specific. I get the feeling that she's hanging with my mom, because my mom was her mama and her caregiver, and they live together, and it's really lonely at night, right? At night's the worst in those few that first while in grief, and having that empty house. So I think she's been there. And as I was getting to on a few days ago, I can't remember which day, Thursday maybe, my mom was in the town where Darla's vet is, running some errands, and she was pulling up to the red light right at the corner where the vet is. And as she's pulling up to the red light, the vet calls and says, "Darla's ready to be picked up." So my mom was right there, and it just felt like when my mom told me that, I was like, "Oh my God, Darla." Like it just, I make that connection of like, what perfect timing. And yeah, so Darla's home now. I'll get to see the little mementos and stuff when I go tomorrow. I think we're gonna open them up. My mom did take Darla out of the bag because it just didn't Darla didn't like bags. I was like, didn't seem right to keep her in a bag till I got there. I said, "Take her out of the bag." So I think she's sitting on her favorite spot on the couch. Her urn's there. So you do weird things sometimes in the aftermath to just have that little comfort. And I think her towel on her spot on the couch is still there with her fur, and her fur still on the top of the couch. It's just like, it's okay if you're not ready to just like erase all the evidence right away, and you just need time to like acclimatize a little bit. Just talking about the brain and the worldview, um that struggle between the two things, right? If you need to just leave their fur on the couch for a little while, that's fine. You need to leave their stuff out for a little while, that's fine. Do what's best for you. Forget about what society or other people in judgment say. Do what helps to regulate your nervous system and help you to kind of like process it in the timeline you need, because there's no timeline with grief. And with that, I'm going to sign off. I'm sure this has been a super long episode. Maybe one of these days I'll just tell some Darla stories. I would love to share that for those who would like to listen, because she was she was quite the cat. Oh my God. Anyway, I have some stories, but we'll leave it for another episode. Thank you if you've made it to the end of this, for holding that just kind of space in the time that you listen. I feel it. I feel the heart hugs. Thank you to those who have reached out to me in this time and just like sent me love and stuff. I feel it. And it's helped a lot. So if I haven't been as responsive in messages and stuff, I've just sometimes you just need to have the quiet and just go inward, right? So I hope everyone's doing well. I'm sending you heart hugs if you need one. And oh, coming up this Thursday. So it airs Monday. So this Thursday is our monthly class. It's going to be on cycles, which actually that gives me another idea, something to add to the content. But seasons, lunar cycles, like even our feminine menstrual cycle, and becoming aware of them and how to kind of work with them. So I'm going to talk about that. And I guess birth, death, and birth is another one I can talk about. So that just popped in. But yeah, that'll be Thursday night inside the Living on Lemonade group at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're around and want to listen live, come join us. The replay will live inside the group after, and it'll be a podcast episode probably the following week. So next week. All right, everyone, take care, and we will talk soon. Bye.